The disciples have been fishing all night long. All night long, they've been fishing when Jesus comes on the boat, is preaching to the crowds, and says, how about another couple of hours? I don't know about you, but it reminds me a little bit of the medical profession right now, who have been overworked and working multiple shifts and beyond their capacities. I imagine the disciples washing their nets, preparing to go home with no fish. The Bible doesn't tell us who's not fed, or the Bible doesn't tell us if they will get paid or not, only that they have fished all night and God prepared to go home with empty nets. And so he says to them, go back, drop your nets one more time into the deep water, and they catch a miraculous catch of fish. So much so that they have to call their buddies from the other boat to come and pull them in. So many fish that will feed so many people, just like Jesus, right? Who will feed thousands, multiples, and more and all. But the disciples have fished all night. And they're exhausted. And we're exhausted. Our jobs seem to be out of control. We're working, we're doing the roles and responsibilities of two or three others. We're tired. And Jesus says, drop your nets one more time into the deep water where there are schools of fish, sustenance for the journey. I believe that there is sustenance in the deep water for all of us. And so we do. Drop our nets one more time. Frustrated, disappointed, exhausted, one more time into the deep water. And there, miracles will be made. You know, the writers of Ted Lasso, and this is our concluding sermon on the Apple TV series that if you're lucky to get on apple.com and be able to buffer those shows, and there is a spoiler alert here from early in the season, and I'm sorry, but it's so good that it needs to be shared, especially for those of us who won't get a chance to tune in. But the writers of Ted Lasso go into very deep water. They do explain, finally and in time, where his anxiety comes from, where the panic attacks come from, what's gone on in his life. We learn about the separation of his marriage. And then we learn what happened to his dad. And we start to realize that Ted Lasso might be one of those people who lives with great humor and busyness and funny chatter because there's so much residing in the deep that it is too painful to go there. But I think there is sustenance in the deep, and so does the good doctor who shows up to care for the team. The good doctor shows up and sits up high in the bleachers and watches over the ball field and watches how the team interacts. And we use that image for God, don't we? Saying that God is the loving parent in the stands, cheering for us, bidding us. And good doctors bidding us success. And the good doctor is there bidding us to go deeper into our stories and into the work and into the scriptures so that we can make meaning that is both literal and highly symbolic, to understand that those schools of fish are not just food for so many, but there are schools within us, in the deep place within us, a school of our soul, where our life can speak, our soul can speak, and where God knows us, meets us at that point of need. And the writers for Ted Lasso will unpack the trauma and unpack his avoidance of the meetings with the doctor. And the relationship, the deep, deep relationship that's formed there. Ted Lasso's one of those characters who reveals how intelligent he is, but in some of how he acts, you kind of wonder sometimes, because he's silly and a little goofy, you wonder how intellectual he is, but then he's always quoting writers and alluding to books. And he owns his racism. When he makes comments, he very clearly says, yeah, that was pretty racist, what I just said. And I think if we learn anything from Ted Lasso, we might learn how to do that. Go deeper and understand the things that we say. Understand the things that we say and to whom we say them. Understand the rubs. Go deeper. There's a school there, a library for our soul. The gospel, according to Ted Lasso, goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And while deep relationships are formed, some relationships get broken, and it is fascinating the way that it plays out. But the writers help us along never to think we know what's going to happen next, and life is a little like that. Just when we think we've answered the questions are new and changed, and we have to go deeper again and again and again. We've been holding contemplative worship services. Some call them taze, some call them centering prayer practice. I'm calling them on the bulletin board outside meditation, because we are looking to reach the people with new ways of doing things in their lives, new ways of what they've longed for and craving. If I hear one more person say, I should meditate, right? They're the people we might want to reach. One of the chief practitioners of centering prayer in the world the last decades is Father Thomas Keating. Father Thomas Keating, in his practice, talks about going to the deep water within us. When he helps us to go inside, he also says that the scariest thing that we'll go through in our lives is being born into this world, and how frightening it can be. He talks about that in centering prayer and in contemplative prayer. We go down deep below the surface of the water, the surface of things, and into that deep, deep, quiet place. And then we let the water still. And we know that Jesus leads us, right, to still waters that will restoreth our soul. And so deep within the water, deep in the water, we pause. Father Thomas Keating will remind us that there is still a lot of debris floating along the surface. There is still a lot of noise. There are boats, there is garbage, there is seaweed, and there are jet skis buzzing around, and that they are our thoughts, and that they are our fears and our worries. And if we go deep enough, we can live in that deep place, and we can observe what's happening on the surface of things that has little to do with what's going on in the library of our soul. The school of fish and sustenance that lives there. When we're willing to go deeper and deeper still, we will learn that it is okay for things to have two meanings. We will learn that it is okay to not have all the answers, because deep within the well that is within us are other answers, other possibilities. We get below the surface of our lives, and we realize that there is a school there as we go deeper and we go quiet in the silence just for a moment. We let those things settle. Watch the worry and the fear go by. One of the most poignant for me moments in the series of Ted Lasso comes around a daily practice that Ted employs from his very first day on the job, where he enters his boss's room, office every morning and comes to her and says, "Good morning, good morning." And she sees that bakery box and thinks, "Oh, goodness gracious, I can't go there first thing in the morning." And she opens the bakery box and she bites into that food, that sustenance, first thing in the morning. And she says, "Oh my goodness, where did you get that? Where's the bakery? Where's the coffee shop? Who made that biscuit?" And Ted, of course, isn't going to give away any of his secrets, right? And morning by morning by morning, unfailing love and thank you and welcome and relationships are being born. And morning by morning by morning, he enters his office with her office with the bakery box and says, "Good morning, boss." And she wonders where this guy gets this spirit, this kind of love, this kind of resilience in the midst of his pain and trauma. Where did this guy get this biscuit, for crying out loud? And then it's at the end of one of the very short episodes that we find Ted Lasso covered in flour and baking shortbread, defying every judgment we might have made of him, defying every alternative response that he could have to his brokenness, challenging every possible outcome for his life. He is baking shortbread. And on the night in which Jesus gave himself up for us, he decided to make dinner for his friends and say, "Good morning, and welcome. God is with you." And so it is that we realize that small gestures help us to go deeper. When we wonder about the baker or the potter or the fisherman, we wonder about the God who bids us to go deeper and make a miracle in your own life. A miracle so much that you're going to be able to go out and feed the people. This is the God we worship. The God who tells us, "Go deeper, trust me, I love you. Good morning, welcome, thank you." Taste and see that the Lord is good. Amen.